Thank you for having me, and I'll just jump right in because I know our time is now limited. I'm trying to adjust myself here because I'm on a tiny laptop. I can't even see myself. Okay, so I am going to talk today about the real truth about greenwashing and humane washing of our food. And I was going to talk a little about myself. I think I might skip that part because we're time constrained now, but I have been vegan for over 30 years. And I've been in that time a vegan advocate doing vegan advocacy work. And the conversations have all been about kind of the same, what you'd expect about protein and things like that. But something shifted over the last maybe 10 years or so. And people started saying things like, well, but I buy my eggs at Whole Foods, so, they're much better, or I'm buying free range, organic, or all these labels. So I dug into that and thought it was an interesting new development in the movement. And I wrote a book about it called The Ultimate Betrayal: Is There Happy Meat? And it is all about just that, those labels that we're seeing. And what I call this is the humane hoax. So whoops, let's go back one. All right, so what is the humane hoax? So the humane hoax is this kind of a false assumption that there's a wide range of better ways to breed and slaughter animals to produce animal products. And so let's just start with one that is very prevalent. We're seeing it everywhere now. I mean, I even saw, I was at a coffee shop and saw that there was a muffin and it said cage-free eggs. So cage-free is becoming very, very popular. It's estimated to be 20% of the market very soon. And, what happened was that animal advocates, we did an incredible job over decades now of exposing the horrors in animal agriculture. And one of those terrible things were the battery cages that egg-laying hens were in. And they still are, there's still tons of battery cage operations with these tightly confined birds just crammed into these cages, stacked on top of each other. It's like living your entire life in a crowded elevator. Horrible. So we focused on that and said, this is very, very cruel. And people were concerned. People didn't want to see birds in that kind of suffering, and they wanted better welfare standards. So they, we all were concerned, complained, and the industry responded. And they got the birds out of the cages. But this picture kind of depicts what we have now. And this is a typical cage-free egg operation. I don't think anybody's going to disagree that we shouldn't have gotten the animals out of the cages. Of course, we should get them out of the cages. But is this any kind of ideal life for these animals? They're now in these windowless warehouses, thousands of birds crowded in, no sunlight, no natural lighting or air. It's just really miserable for them. And what the problem is, and they're still experiencing burning in their eyes and throats from all of the waste in these buildings. It's just horrible in there. And they go to a very brutal slaughter at a young age. So while the confinement of the battery cage is relieved, that is ended, and they are technically cage-free, that's not, the entirety of the picture. That's not the only horror that they face. And not everything is resolved by a cage-free label. But that's the perception, is that now the birds are living a good life. They're not in the cages. So, it's misleading. And that's what these labels are. They're incredibly misleading. And from the beginning of their lives to the end, there are cruelties beyond the cage and beyond confinement. So we're going to talk about that.
Hope, this is Ben from The Real Truth. Hi again. And just wanted to interrupt for one quick second. wanted to make sure you knew we've got the full 2 hours for you. We don't want you to feel rushed in any way. And we want our audience to know that we'll have you for our full 2 hours, including the question and answer. So we're thrilled to have you. And just want to make sure everybody knows we're getting all of you. So we're
Oh,
not
good.
rushing.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's good to know. That's good to know because I was kind of planning in my head of skipping some things. So maybe we'll do the full thing. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. So alternative animal products. There are inherent cruelties in all animal farming that cannot be avoided and aren't diminished by a feel-good label. So to produce a profitable product, the well-being of the animal is going to be compromised in numerous ways. And, these inherent cruelties, it's beyond even just the standard agricultural practices that are just universal to making a product profitable. There are also other cruelties, and I'll get into that. But there's, just the basics, the universal practices of body mutilations, separation of families, slaughter at a very young age. None of this really changes in these alternative labeled operations. Okay, so I want to take a closer look at egg production. So when we think of how chickens come into this world, how a baby chick is born, this may be something that we are thinking of, right? A nest and a mother hen, the babies are warm and comfortable. And do you know that even when the babies are still in the eggs, the mother hen and the babies can communicate. The chicks cluck and coo to each other and to the mom. They're in communication even while they're just still in the egg. So just such a beautiful experience, a beautiful bond of love. And that is completely denied, completely gone in all in all chicken farming, both chicken farming for their flesh and for their eggs, no matter the label. Chicks are hatched in these horrible hatcheries. They are in metal drawers. They're immediately, as soon as they're born, thrust into a world of conveyor belts and metal machinery, and they're tossed about like canned goods. And it's really horrible. I have some gruesome details in my book that I won't go into now, but just really a horrible way to come into the world. Certainly not in a loving, warm nest with a mother hen. They are immediately sexed, especially during the egg-laying hens, because the males that were born to the genetic strand of egg layers are not profitable to be raised for meat. Of course, aren't going to lay eggs because they're boys, and they're not profitable. They don't grow quickly enough to be raised for meat. So the male chicks are thrown away by the billions, tossed into the garbage. It's absolutely horrible. They suffocate on the way to their brothers, die of dehydration and exposure. Some go down conveyor belts into maceration machines and are ground up alive in these metal maceration machines. Some are electrocuted to death. I mean, what a baby chick is such a symbol of love and innocence and springtime. We'll see them on Easter cards, and here we're killing them by the billions. And that doesn't change with a cage-free label. That doesn't change with a free-range label. Those operations can't profitably hatch their own chicks. So they source all their chicks from these horrible hatcheries. So I live near now Sonoma County, California. I've lived in Sonoma County for 30 years. I'm now in Sacramento, but it's still very close. And there is lots of this alternative farming happening in Sonoma County. And when you go to the chicken farms, because there are alternative chicken flesh and egg operations all over, this is generally what you see. When you are driving around the chicken farm. You don't know it's a chicken farm, and you'll see keep out signs, biohazard signs. But then if you go a little closer, this is typically what you see. You see these large windowless warehouse buildings. I've taken all these pictures, by the way, from places that I've been to personally. And what you don't see is chickens. You just hardly ever see a chicken, even though there are thousands and thousands of birds on these facilities. And then if you go a little closer and peer in, this is what you're going to see. So this is really, again, no better and sometimes even worse than commercial operations. It's farm to farm. It depends on the farm. Just, you know, the differences are minute though. And I'm going to talk more about this in the environmental section, but this, the reason I put free range here is that this picture, this situation, this cage-free operation could be a free-range farm. Free range simply means that the birds have some access to the outside. However, it is not regulated. These labels are woefully unregulated. And all a farmer would have to do is open a little door to an outside mud puddle or concrete area, and maybe only 20 birds of these, you know, hundreds and hundreds of birds could fit out in that area. And he could call that free range. He could even open the door just for 5 minutes a day. There's no length of time as to how long they have access to this outside area. And no one is denied there's no on-site inspection. No one's denied these labels. So really the labels mean nothing. You just don't know. You don't know from operation to operation what's really going on. Okay. So I do want to talk about alternative dairy products because this is getting very prominent as well. We're seeing certified humane. We're even seeing grass-fed dairy now. And unfortunately, some of the same horrors that happen to dairy cows in conventional production still happen on these alternative farms. Artificial insemination, which I'm not going to get into much detail here, but if you're curious, you can go to YouTube and watch videos, and it is, you know, these animals don't breed naturally anymore. They are, unfortunately, well, the males are, you know, masturbated to retrieve the sperm, and then it is inseminated into the females, and it is all just disgusting, honestly, and just really a sexual violation of these animals. Babies are taken away at birth. They're sick animals that are not treated for diseases, and I'm going to talk a little about that. And they all end up at the same slaughterhouse. There's no humane certified slaughterhouse. They all end up at the same slaughterhouse, and it's brutal. So over here on the left, this is what we want to believe is happening in these organic and alternatively labeled farms. We want to believe that the babies can stay with the moms, that they're in the grass, that they've got you know, out in the sunshine and being able to be with each other. That is not the reality. The reality is on the right. The babies are taken away as soon as they're born. This little baby is still wet with her birth fluid. She's been taken away from her mom so early. And I know it's a female. She is a female because she's being put into a calf hutch. And these calf hutches are these kind of a doghouse like plastic hutch where they're separated from each other, from the other calves, separated from their moms. I mean, what does a baby want? What does a baby desire? The love and comfort of their mother. They're scared, they're frightened, they're alone, and these babies never have that beautiful connection of being with their moms. They're just constantly frightened. So again, in Sonoma County, California, there is a lot of humane dairy operations as well. And it's interesting because cows are not as easy to hide as a chicken. A chicken's chickens are much easier to hide, but cows are not. They're much bigger. They have to move them around the farm. They have to separate the moms, the babies into different barns and, move them to the milking parlors. So you see the cows. So they have a different strategy out front of their farms. And what you see are signs like this: certified humane and certified organic and real California milk. Here's some more. You see these signs up and down the west coast of Sonoma County. And I'm realizing that I might be bouncing because I've got this on a lap desk. So I'm going to try to hold a little stiller. I hope I'm not bouncing all over the place. Okay. So when you get a little closer, when you actually go onto the farm, this is what you see. And this is rows and rows and rows of these calf hutches where these babies are separated out from their moms. They're frightened, they're sad, they're alone. This particular picture I took when a farmer allowed us to take a tour of a farm. And it was very interesting. He was very proud of his operation, although all these newborn babies were completely without their moms and in these tiny little areas. But there was straw, and that is not typical. I think that the straw was put there for our benefit. I have seen others where they're just in mud, and I'll show you a picture of that. So you often see, now this is when I wasn't on a tour and I just kind of went onto the farm myself to look around, and you see animals in muck and manure. And this one on the right, this image that I took on the right, this is a little baby, a newborn calf curled up. You can just see him next to that concrete feeder. And I believe this was a male. Because he was separated from the females. The females were over in the calf hutches, and he was here all alone, just curled up, in the mud, and probably awaiting his death. Either the farmers would kill him, or he would be shipped off to veal or beef. Because once again, the males are useless. They don't give dairy. They don't produce milk. So they're useless. You also see injured animals. Now, this is a cow. I wish so much that I had taken video of this cow. I didn't at the time, but that back left leg was so swollen, swollen many more times the other, maybe 2 or 3 times the other feet. And she was limping terribly on this back leg. She could barely walk on this back leg. So you see injured animals all the time. And something else that happens in organic dairy is mastitis. So mastitis happens in all dairy. In commercial, conventional dairy farming, cows get an infection of the udder called mastitis, and it's very painful. The udder can swell. There can be open sores, very painful for her to be milked. And the farmers on conventional operations will give the cows pharmaceuticals and antibiotics to clear up the infection, right? Well, in organic dairy, one of the only stipulations is that the animals are drug-free. And so they're unable to give them, not that they're unable, they can't, through the organic regulations, give them antibiotics and medications. I had a veterinarian, when I was researching my book, I had a veterinarian confide in me that he saw cows with the worst cases of mastitis, in severe pain at milking, when it was on an organic farm, when it was organic. He said that he had never seen that before in his 50 years of doing the work. Just in the last 10 years on organic farms, he was seeing cows suffering more with mastitis. So here's a situation where these labels can be even worse for the animals. All right. So I do want to talk about goat dairy as well, because a lot of people are thinking that goat dairy is a better solution, that it's more humane and smaller scale and all that. Well, unfortunately, we see the same kind of situations and the same kind of suffering in goat dairy. This is a picture of Deb Bloom, who is the founder of Goatlandia Sanctuary. It's a goat sanctuary in Northern California. And I'm on the board of directors, actually, of Goatlandia. And Deb, this is little Tucker that is with Deb in this picture. And I want to tell you Tucker's story. So Tucker was born at a dairy operation in Northern California, and it was a very small operation. It was just a husband and wife and maybe a few employees. And there was a doe on the farm who was having a difficult birth. Tucker's mom was having a difficult birth. So they took her to UC Davis Medical Clinic, veterinarian emergency clinic. And the vets there helped her to give birth to twins, a little girl and a little boy, little female, little male. And as soon as the male was born, the dairy owners said, you can just euthanize him. We don't want him. We don't need him. And the vet was shocked. I mean, here, they had just worked very hard to bring this little, perfectly healthy male goat into the world. And, this owner was just like, we don't need him. He doesn't give milk. And so the vet was kind of horrified and said, okay, whatever. And they left. And she just couldn't do it. She couldn't euthanize this perfectly healthy baby male. So she found Goatlandia, and she found Deb, and Deb drove all the way to Davis and picked up little Tucker and bottle fed him. And Tucker is happy and healthy and living out his life freely and without suffering at Goatlandia. But unfortunately, his brothers are being killed by the hundreds, by the thousands in goat dairy. And some are kept for breeding, but they only need a small number of bucks for breeding. One buck can breed about 100 does. So because of the artificial insemination. So they just don't need that many. And so many are killed. And this is with certified organic. This is with humane. It doesn't matter. The baby males are killed in cow and goat dairy. All right. I want to talk about alternative meat products as well. We've talked about eggs and dairy, and now I want to talk about alternative meat. We still see so many of the same painful procedures: debeaking of chickens, tail docking and cutting of pigs, ear notching, tooth filing, castration, dehorning. I'm not going to get into the details of all these horrible things that happen to these poor animals, but just suffice it to say that there are numerous horrible, painful things that are just universal and standard practice. And the transportation is terrible in all extremes of weather to the slaughterhouse. And again, it's the same slaughterhouse as all the other animals. There's no special slaughterhouse that they're going to. So I want to talk, this is some new information that I have just dug into. And this is a study that just came out in 2020. And it's called the Animal Welfare and Production Challenges Associated with Pastured Pig Systems. And what these researchers did is they studied 20 years, from 2000 to 2020, 20 years of studies and articles on pastured pig production, pork production, both organic and pasture when they're actually out on pasture, truly free range. And it's the study, it's really fascinating because it just underscores the myriad of problems with free-ranging animals and putting animals out on pasture. There's this romanticized notion that that animals out on the field that are not in the buildings are that all the welfare issues are just eliminated if you just get them out of the confinement buildings. But it's just simply not the case, unfortunately. These are domesticated animals. They're not wild animals. And there's a range of issues that can happen that they can suffer from, and sometimes suffer even worse than in the confinement. So they found in this study that there was exposure to extreme temperatures, heat stress, not being able to find adequate shade. So depending on the paddock that they're in, unless there's trees or buildings that provide shade, that provide a windbreak, they can be exposed to some severe weather that if it was a natural situation, they would seek out areas that would protect them from the weather, but they can get sunburn, blistering, especially the pigs with lighter skin can have blistering, extreme cold, frostbite. Piglets have gotten hypothermia, pneumonia. They're more vulnerable to predators, of course. There's more contact with wildlife, with pathogens, parasites. And they found that pastured pork has a much higher risk of having salmonella, campylobacter, a whole host of other things that I cannot pronounce that you don't want in your food. So that's another huge factor. And there's also complexity in the process and monitoring and treating of sick animals. So identifying sick animals and treating them, it's more difficult when they're out on pasture. So, there's again, not all welfare issues are just eliminated by this one thing, the one thing, cage free, free range. There's so many other factors involved in their welfare. And this paper only covered on the farm welfare. It didn't even go into transportation, the slaughterhouse, all the other horrors that they endure in that process. That wasn't in the scope of the study, but it was really fascinating to see how much harm they found in pastured and free range pork, pigs. So I'm going to wrap up the ethical section, the welfare section now, and we're going to switch gears to environmental. But I just want to say, please don't disconnect to the emotional reality of the violence that it is to kill an animal that doesn't want to die, an animal that is just in the beginning of their life. Killing an animal that doesn't want to die can never be compassionate, kind, ethical, humane. So here's a quote from a former small-scale goat farmer. She said, "To watch a sentient being gasp for air and to look into his eyes filled with fear and to see the blood coming from his neck, it's the most heart-wrenching, awful thing." So please be on the compassionate side of history and get animal products out of your diet and live vegan for the animals. And we will switch gears now to the greenwashing aspect. Whoops. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm not good with this computer. Okay. So now we're going to talk greenwashing. And, just having these billions of animals alive, no matter how they're raised, wastes so many resources. We'll go ahead and there we go. Okay. Climate change, mass energy and fossil fuel consumption, deforestation, loss of habitat and biodiversity, water waste, water pollution, air pollution. There's so many issues that we are seeing from the environmental impact of animal agriculture. And the good news, though, here's the good news. The good news is that we, animal advocates, and climate activists, vegan climate activists, have been talking about this for years. I have been giving this form of a talk one way or another for 30 years now. And finally, we're seeing the environmental community and journalists and the media and mainstream media embracing and understanding and reporting on the fact that animal agriculture is really impactful on the environment. So that's really cool to see. I see it all the time now in Time Magazine and National Geographic, and where places where you would never ever see it before. So that's good. That's the good news. But what can we do about it? What can be done? Well, The animal agriculture industry has something that you can do about it. They know what you can do about it. They've given you options. You can buy sustainably labeled animal products, local, organic, free range, all of these. So we're going to get into these labels and really, really break it down and see if they are the green superstars that the industry wants them to be. So we'll start with local. Now we're seeing this label everywhere now. It's really just everywhere in the store, especially in natural food stores. You see this label on everything, and the definition of this, there is no definition legally or consensus wise. Basically, the product or the store or whatever can make the mileage whatever they want it to be considered local. But if you look at a food's carbon footprint, and there's been numerous studies now that have looked at what makes a food impactful on the environment, specifically on climate disruption. And they have found that the transportation factor, how local the food is about 11% of the equation. But the production phase, how much energy and resources it takes to produce the product, that's 83% of the equation. And animal products are heavy on production and resources. Whenever there's a life cycle assessment of a food, and a life cycle assessment is where they measure the food from seed to plate or inception to plate, seed to plate for a plant food, inception to plate for an animal food. We'll explain that. And they are finding again and again that animal products have the higher impact, no matter how they're raised, no matter what the label is. A study in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology found that switching just 2 meals a week from dairy and vegetable foods to switching to a vegan diet, basically for 2 days a week, achieves more greenhouse gas reduction than buying all locally sourced food. And this is, really impactful. And I'll give an example. So let's say you're at the store and you really want to eat more eco, you're looking for more eco products, and you see an organic tomato and you see that it's from Mexico. And you think, oh my goodness, that's had to come really far. It's a lot of food miles. That's not going to be as eco as this local dairy product, like a local yogurt or something like that. No, it's not the case. Dairy products, animal products, it takes so much more resources, so much more fossil fuel, so much more energy to produce that even though it's local, even though it's organic, it's going to be more impactful than that tomato. All right. So moving on to free range. Now, most people believe that when you are buying a free range product, that it is better environmentally in some way. And the reason that I use this picture, again, we're back to this picture, is because this could be considered free range. Like I said, all a farmer has to do is open a door, 5 minutes a day, and this could be considered free range. So really, there's no difference. There's no true change from free range, from a conventional to free range. As far as environmental, there's no difference. But let's say that there is a truly free range situation, that they actually, so this farmer, if you look at this building and this picture, this building sits on maybe half an acre of land, maybe a full acre of land. Now, let's say this farmer says, I want to go free range. I want to get more money for my eggs, is really the reason that they do it. I am going to give these birds a little bit more space, maybe, a bit more space for them to have some semblance of natural behaviors. He would need, even double the space wouldn't be enough. Triple the space wouldn't be enough. He would need acres and acres more land. And so this is when we're getting into that. If we truly wanted to free range all the animals that we have confined in confinement buildings, we would have to clear millions of acres of wild areas, forests and prairies and wetlands to accommodate all these free-ranged animals and local animals. You know, free-ranging animals for food can never be more than a specialty market for a few elite buyers. We can't scale it up. We would need closer to 5 planet Earths to be able to accommodate all the farmed animals on this planet and give them the space that they need and deserve. So it just simply can't be done. All right, let's move on to grass-fed. Now, grass-fed, this one was really interesting when I started digging into the research here. Grass-fed, I mean, why does someone buy the grass-fed label? They think it's more environmental, really. That's the number one reason that someone would buy a grass-fed product, is that they think it's more environmental. Well, guess what? Grass-fed beef can produce 50 to 60% more greenhouse gas emissions than grain-eating conventional feedlot cattle. And they also waste more water because they're moving around, they're drinking more. It takes 18 to 24 months longer to get grass-fed cows up to market weight, slaughter weight. So that extends the time that they're alive, burping greenhouse gases and polluting the water and drinking the clean water. And, you know, it's worse. It's actually worse. There's been numerous studies on this now out of Oxford and Harvard and Washington State University, and they're comparing conventional feedlot cattle with the grass-fed cattle. And again, they're finding that grass-fed products require more land, more water, more fossil fuels, produce the most greenhouse gases. I mean, this is a situation where this label isn't just neutral, it's worse. It's really awful. So, okay, so now this is where some locavores and some environmental proponents that are into the food and agriculture issues would say, hang on. You can't just throw the cows out there and expect it all to be okay. There's methods, there's ways to do it. And that's when we get into regenerative grazing. So regenerative grazing has really become the darling of the locavore movement, of the food movement. You'll see a lot of stuff around regenerative grazing. It goes by lots of names: rotational grazing, short duration grazing, multi-paddock grazing. But regenerative is kind of the new buzzword around it. And so what it is, I'll explain what it is first before I get into a little about it. But the reason I use this image is to kind of give you a visual. And what a farmer needs to do regenerative grazing is he needs a big area of land, acres of land, for a very small number of animals, very small herd of animals. And they need to be ruminants, so it'd be cows or sheep. And you put the ruminants, the cows or sheep, in one of these triangles, one of these spaces, and they graze and they eat the grass. And then once it's eaten down a bit, they take away one of these lines, one of the white lines, move, it's a fence, move the cows over, put the fence back up. And now the cows graze in that next small triangle, and that other triangle regenerates, or the grasses grow back. So this is the idea. But it seems really simple, but there's a lot of complicated reasons why this is not the green solution that everyone wants it to be. And it's nothing new. This has actually been studied for like 4 decades. And unfortunately, the bottom line, the big picture is that there's just not any peer-reviewed research that shows that this is a better system long-term in any way. But I do get into this issue deeply on my podcast. So I'm going to give a plug for my podcast here. I have a podcast called the Hope for the Animals podcast, where you can hear me at my best because I get to audio edit out all the ums and nos, which is great. But I have some wonderful guests. And one of the guests that I just had recently was Dr. Tushar Mehta, and he is a data specialist, and he has dug into why regenerative grazing is not really the eco solution, and how the ranchers are manipulating the science on their websites and in their literature to make it look a lot better than it actually is. So I encourage you to go to my podcast and listen to episode 27. It's called Debunking or Dismantling Regenerative Animal Agriculture, I believe, with Dr. Tushar Mehta. So if you're interested in this and want to get more in depth, please check out my podcast. All right. So basically, just kind of wrapping up the free ranging thing, free ranging, grass fed, rotational grazing, whatever it is, it's something that people really want to believe is true. They really want their beef burger, but unfortunately, it just doesn't hold water scientifically. And it can't be scaled up. Once again, with regenerative grazing, I mean, you're using a small number of animals for a huge area of land. If we already have a land issue, if we're already using so much of our land for animal agriculture, why is the solution to use more? It's not. So, all right. So we're going to now move on to organic, I believe is my next slide. Should be. Yes, organic. So organic, the reason I want to kind of focus in on organic is for a number of reasons, but mainly that this is the one of the labels that really does have some oversight. It has on-site inspection of the farm. There's a process to get the organic certification. There's a rigorous process around it. So this is the only label that really does have some teeth, some regulation around it. But the only thing with organic animal agriculture, the only thing that is required is that the animals are fed feed that is free of pesticides and is considered organic, and that the animals are drug-free. And there's some regulation on access to the outside, depending on the species of animal, but that's it. All the other detrimental effects of animal agriculture, the methane release, the greenhouse gas emissions, water waste, water pollution, all of that, none of that is addressed with the organic label. That doesn't have anything to do with the organic label. So it doesn't, unfortunately, do a lot. And here's a chart to help you kind of visualize it. So we have 3 diets here. There's veganism, vegetarianism, and a diet that includes animal products. And of course, the green lines going across is the impact of those diets, how much impact on climate disruption. The dark green line on the bottom is conventional farming. The light green line above it is organic farming. So if you look down at the very bottom of the chart, and you've got that dark green line going across at the bottom, that's the standard American diet. That's what most everyone is eating. Now, let's say someone is inspired. They were just inspired by Earth Day, and they said, I'm going to eat more eco. I want to really, make my diet more green. I'm going to go organic. I'm going to buy all organic dairy and organic meat. Okay, well, you do make a bit of an impact. You go up to that light green line at the bottom, right above the dark green line, and you've reduced your impact by 8%. All right, that's something. But let's say the same person says, I'm inspired. I want to eat more eco. I'm going to go vegan. I'm going to eat all vegan. And now we're not even talking about organic, just conventional vegan food. Now you have dropped down to that top dark green line under the vegan diet, and you have reduced your impact by 87%. Now we're talking. Now there's some impact there, right? You can take it all the way and go organic vegan, and you've dropped down to that tiny little light green line at the top, and you've reduced your impact by 94%. But this just is yet another illustration again and again and again of how it's the animal products that are so impactful on the diet. Organic, yeah, it's a little helpful. Local, sure, a little helpful. Grass-fed, not so much. It's worse. But animal products, that's where the impact is. All right. So I'm going to wrap up the environmental section with this study. We're going to go back to big picture. And the Alliance of World Scientists, which is 15,000 scientists that are chosen from numerous countries all over the world, over 100 countries. They asked all these scientists to research what they felt would be the best thing an individual could do to reduce their impact on climate change. What is the most impactful thing that an individual can do? What they found and what they released, their statement is that they want to encourage people to avoid all animal products. And that's the number one most impactful personal choice we can make for climate disruption. They didn't say buy an electric car. They didn't say stop driving. They didn't say buy local meat. They didn't even say reduce your animal products. They said stop eating, avoid all animal products. So it just shows you how impactful this is. All right, so I want to switch gears in the end here and kind of just go back to that concept of the humane hoax and talk about language and labels and how we are being manipulated by these labels and this language. So this is a picture of a slaughterhouse. And this is in my area, is in Petaluma, California. And you just drive down Petaluma Boulevard, and this slaughterhouse is right on the main road. And it's been there for years and years and years. And it used to be called Rancho Veal, actually. It was a veal specific slaughterhouse. And but we have evolved now. And veal is, of course, been exposed to be the horror that it is, killing a baby. So that's not, in vogue, let's say. But these new ways of describing meat, new methods and new words. So recently, this slaughterhouse, they repainted. They were bought by Marin Sun Farm, which is a local grass-fed beef farm. And they repainted, and they put on the side of their slaughterhouse mindful meats. And I was driving down the road, and when I saw this slaughterhouse with the new mindful meats on their nice whitewashed wall, I had to pull over. I had to pull over and take a picture, and I had to pull over and just do the proverbial facepalm, and just, I was so appalled and shocked. And I mean, to think that anything mindful is happening in a slaughterhouse, I mean, and as a spiritual person, I was really appalled. Mindful, the word mindful comes from Buddhism. It's, it's that concept of meditation and mindfulness, of being aware of our actions, being aware of our relationships, being aware of how we treat ourselves, our bodies, all these things. And to have the complete oxymoron of mindful meats, I was just, it was mind-boggling. So this is what we're up against now. This is kind of the new challenge, the 21st century vegan activist, to try to dismantle this new terminology and this new language. And this is interesting. So there was a survey done by Sentience Institute, and it found that 58% of people that were polled think that farmed animals are treated well, and 75% believe that the products that they are purchasing come from animals that were treated humanely. 75%. The humane labeled products are only now maybe 3 or 4% of the market. How can 75% of what people buy, So what's happening is that the presence of these alternative and humane labeled products in the market, it's creating this false sense of security. It's making people feel that there is a industry-wide improvements, that everything's getting better, when that is not the case at all. It really, in reality, it's getting worse for the animals. These places are just getting bigger and more horrible. but they are assuming that this is an industry-wide trend and that things are getting better. So it's really insidious and very, very dangerous to have these products out there. Sentience Institute also proposes, I'll quote, this is a quote from them, "This suggests a psychological refuge effect where people justify their animal product consumption by incorrectly assuming that they're eating ethically produced products." So, just because it's a small farm, just because it's got a humane label, just because you met the owner or the rancher, it does not mean that there is not all of the standard industrial cruelties, the standard animal agriculture cruelties, the universal practices that I just went over. And it also doesn't mean that these animals weren't punched and prodded and kicked and tortured in terrible ways. Tormented. I interviewed people for my book, and there's quotes throughout my book about this, where these workers that were at small farms, family farms, that they saw animals tortured, poked with prods and with pitchforks and kicked with boots, and just horrible things. These animals endure unimaginable suffering. And the only humane choice is vegan. So I'm going to wrap up now. I'm going to give a last plug for my podcast, the Hope for the Animals podcast. And I started this during the pandemic. It was really crazy. I didn't realize that 90%, 95% of what I did with my activism was in-person events. I was either going to speak at an event, or I was organizing an event, or I was, it was all events. And when the pandemic hit, I was sitting on my couch in the springtime, which is generally so busy. And I was just shocked. I was like, everything is ended. What do I do? And I knew that I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there. The animals were still being slaughtered. The animals were still suffering. So I decided to start a podcast. And I'm about 27 episodes deep now. It's been a real experience and challenge, but it's been fun. And I have some amazing guests on. I have a great archive of all those past episodes now, and I release about 3 a month. So if you'd like to go to hopefortheanimalspodcast.org, it's really easy. It's just the name of the podcast.org. That's our website. You can listen to any of the episodes there, or wherever if you listen to podcasts, you can just, find me in iTunes or Spotify or any of those. And be sure to put us in your listening library if you listen to podcasts, and also giving a rating or a review on iTunes is so helpful. It bumps us up to get more people listening. So I would really appreciate that. And also, before I wrap up, I'm just going to say, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I apologize again for the late start and for a little bit of fluster, of my fluster in the beginning, and possibly throughout, because of all the technical issues. But I did the best I could. I'm glad I was able to figure it out. We were able to figure it out and get through it. So this is, I guess my book also I'll plug in the end. It's The Ultimate Betrayal, Is There Happy Meat? I'm sure that it's available on the bookstore at the conference here. I'm pretty sure it is. And I'll end with this quote from my book. "It is not our methods of animal agricultural practices that need to change. It is our unwillingness to let go of animal products and animal farming." Thank you.
Hope, thank you so much for this really very moving presentation, and of course, very alarming one, I think, for so many of us. And no need to apologize. You were fabulous. So we really do appreciate it. And yes, just to confirm, as you were just mentioning, yes, everybody can find your book at therealtruthabouthealth.com on our bookstore tab. So by all means, go ahead and get Hope's book there as well. And as so many of you know, and in case you don't, we're going to take some questions, right? Hope, you're ready for that?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Fantastic. So thank you. So just want to make sure everybody understands we're not able to take questions from the written chat box, but what we do is we have you raise your hand, and then we'll go ahead and select raised hands in the order in which they come. And how do you do that? In case you don't know, there should be a reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It might be at the top of your screen or the side of the screen, but there should be a reactions tab. You click on the reactions tab. A few options show up. You click on the raise hand option, and we will see your hand raised. Again, we'll take your question in the order in which it comes. If for some reason you don't have a reactions tab, you might try your participants tab, and you might find that raise hand button there as well. I see a couple of questions coming in. One other thing we want to make sure of, a couple of things. When you're asking Hope a question, we will ask you to unmute when it's your turn. We ask you to keep your question brief. Keep in mind that other people are listening, so we keep it as open for everyone as possible, and try to keep it to one question because we want to make sure we have enough time for everybody. So with that said, all that housekeeping, Hope, we're going to go ahead. I see that Amanda is the first hand raised, and Amanda, if you can go ahead and unmute. I see you did. Thank you. What's your question for Hope?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Hope, for that. It was really remarkable. I'm an animal activist myself. And I do a lot of straight activism and having conversations with people and helping them bridge the connection from the animal pieces that they purchase in the store to the pieces on their plate. And I find that there's a lot of people who don't really know because there's such a disconnect in like socially, where we just go to the grocery store and you grow up thinking this piece of, plastic holds this thing that we have to eat for nutritional value. And I've done several different kinds of activism, and I find that the speaking to people one-on-one is very beneficial. And I like the aha moments, but it is a one-on-one thing, and it's not like for the masses. And I love that you have the podcast, and I know it's taking a long time for me to get to my question. So in all of your 30 years of being vegan, what have you found to be the most received way that people really make the connection on such a, to get such a wide band of people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking. What's most effective? Yeah, so I would say that we are learning. We're trying to figure that out as activists over the last 40, 50 years, 2 or 3 decades. We have been trying to figure that out. What's most effective? And I think we've learned a lot. I think we've learned that one thing is to really, you want to have empathy, you want to have sympathy. You don't want to judge or attack or make people feel uncomfortable. You don't make change when someone's yelling at you. You make change when you're talking to a friend, right? So it's more about having empathy for the people that you're talking. And I'll tell you something that I have noticed over this last year is that we really lose that empathy when we're online. And people that I've seen that have wonderful one-on-one conversations with people like that when they're leafleting or tabling will just, have great conversations and be kind and generous and have a conversation with someone. Once they get online, then suddenly it gets very ugly very fast, and people feel so much more able to attack or get frustrated or debate or defend. So I guess one thing that I want to this is getting kind of very into the minute, but online, just be as empathetic, as conversational and generous as you would be face to face, because we just lose that when we're online, and we're really, vegans are kind of known as like the meanest people on the internet. So don't do that, please. Don't feed into that. Let's be the nicest people on the internet, so people will want to be in the vegan club. They want to be part of what we're doing. So that's something that we've learned, is that, we want to be friendly and open and understanding of where people are, all of that. As far as what's most effective, like if someone asked me, what can I do? What's the most effective thing I could do? What I would say is, what do you love to do? Or what are you good at? You know, we need everything. Just saying, oh, go out and leaflet. Well, if you don't like leafleting, if that's not an enjoyable experience for you, then that's not going to be the best thing for you to do. You know, so you got to find what you're good at, what brings you joy, and not necessarily that it's joyful, but that you can maintain it and sustain it for years, because we need people doing this work for years. Yeah. So I don't know what's most effective. It's hard to say, but I think that just continuing what we're doing, learning what's most effective, learning the best ways to do things, and reaching people where they are online is really great. You know, and that we've got to switch and shift with whatever's happening. And I'm so glad to see that with the pandemic, just like this conference, that, you know, we're moving things online, moving things to where people are. So yeah, just being adaptable and as effective as we can be.
Hope, thank you. Up next, we have someone with the initials TK. TK, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I just had a question. I am a pet owner, and I was just wondering, so I feel a little bit hypocritical because I don't eat meat, but I also buy cans and cans of meat for my cats because they have to eat. So I was just wondering what you suggest for pet owners. And I know that the animal suffered. So is there a way around that? Thank you.
Oh, is there a way around it? I hear you. I know exactly what you're going through. I have had 6 kitties come through my life, all rescue situations or roommates that left a cat or whatever it was, and they became, you know, in my care. And it's so hard because okay, I'll say this. There are animals that are very easily vegan. Dogs can be vegan easily. There's some great vegan dog foods out there, V-Dog and Wild Earth. There's rabbits are wonderful vegan pets. They are completely vegan companion animals, if we don't like the word pets. So yeah, it's, you know, there are options if you are wanting a companion animal and don't want to buy meat. A dog or a rabbit are great ideas. Cats. That's where we get into the gray areas and the sticky issues. Cats are obligate carnivores. They do need meat, taurine, which is only found in meat, amino acid. So it's more challenging. There are vegan cat foods, and some cats do fine on those vegan cat foods. I tried to put my cats on vegan cat food, and I think I had 4 kitties at the time, and one of them got deathly ill. To the point where he was at the vet and almost died. And it was because of the food. Now, granted, this was about 10 years ago. So I think the formulas have gotten better. However, it's tricky and challenging with cats, I will say. I think some people can do that comfortably, and maybe the cats will do fine and thrive. Others may not feel comfortable and feel that they do need to give them meat because that is what they need naturally. So it's challenging. I know it's very challenging. And here's what the conclusion that I came to is that when this kitty came into my life, when my kitties came into my life, I wasn't as aware. I didn't really think about it. I didn't think like, oh, if I bring this cat into my life, I'm going to have to feed him meat all the time. So the damage is kind of done. I made a commitment to this cat, to this life, to take care of him, to keep him healthy. And so once you have made that commitment, you kind of have to make compromises and do what you need to do to keep that cat healthy. If you give the cat to someone else, you're just putting that burden on someone else. And maybe they won't make the best choices that you would. So at this point, all my kitties have all passed, and I've chosen not to get another cat because I don't want to buy more meat. So, you know, so everybody has to make that choice for themselves. But I think once you have a kitty and you've made this epiphany, you have to just realize that you made the commitment to the kitty compromises have to be made, and you've got to keep your cat healthy in the best way that you see fit. Now, an exciting thing on the horizon is cultured meat for cats and dogs. So that's an exciting, there's a lot of controversy around cultured meat. I still don't know where I fall on it, but I am excited about it for pet food, for cats. That would be great. That's what I hope they put the energy into with cultured meat, so that we can get our kitties on the cultured meat. Of course, cultured is the lab grown, or where they take a cell, grow it, and it's actual meat, but didn't come directly from a slaughtered animal. So there are technologies on the horizon that could make this a better option and better decisions, and maybe I could get a kitty at that point. But I hear your frustration and your conflict, and that feeling of hypocrisy. But just know that you made a commitment to this kitty. You've got to keep him healthy and safe. So compromises have to be made.
Thank you, Hope. Up next, we have Rose H. If you go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I have two short questions. So first question is, where is the right resource to influence halal believers that the method of halal slaughtering is still kind of unhumanistic, even it's done to feed humans, right? And like halal believers, they guided by God. And for my opinion, this guidance is kind of misleading. And the second question is about Ayurveda. Like with my Russian pronunciation, maybe I pronounce it wrong, but Ayurveda is ancient East Indian healing, maybe based on medicine belief of healing, which I love, but the Ayurveda still using ghee and milk with a lot of like recipes and so on. So what to do? Because kind of Ayurveda is very good subject, but still it's misleading.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So halal, if people don't know, is a sanctioned, I think she talked a little bit about it, but a spiritually sanctioned meat in Islam, Judaism? Wait, no, I said it right. Islam. Halal. So I honestly, I don't know a lot about it. I'm not going to get into that. It's not something that I know a great deal about. But to your second question about ghee and dairy, I actually find that in the religious culture that I have chosen, which is Hinduism and Jainism. I'm a converted Hindu/Jain, and that is absolutely an issue that I see all the time. So there's cultural things, and I think the best thing to do really is to find those vegans in those communities that can speak to those issues from a personal standpoint, or from a firsthand standpoint. So find someone that is within the tradition that's vegan and that is speaking up for the animals within that tradition, and then raise their voice, share their information. I think that's the best way to do that. Yeah, that's about all I'll have to say about that. I don't know a whole lot about that realm. Sorry.
Hope, thanks. In fact, Rose does have a follow-up question to that. So we're going to have her unmute one more time.
Yes, actually, you advised me to connect with the people who is Hindu, right? My ex-mother-in-law, she's East Indian woman. And I know everything about this culture, and I cook curry, and I know how to cook chicken curry, and I was very good with that, but I stopped to do all animal product. But grandma, she believes in yogurt, in milk, in cheese, and that she is a Hindu vegan, and she kind of support to feed our kids with all this milk and yogurt products. That's it. Thank you.
Well, maybe next time you're visiting grandma, bring some non-dairy milk and have her try that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Just, people have deep-rooted cultures, and we have to be very respectful of that and show that, being kind to animals and to the planet is in line with their culture and with their religion. And it's because universally, the heart of all religions is care and compassion and love. So we just tap into that, try to have people understand that we're not trying to change their culture or their religion. We're just trying to help them to live more in line with their culture and tradition by being more compassionate and showing more love.
Hear, hear, Hope. Thank you for that. And that's actually the last of our questions. And I know our tech team is going to go ahead and bring up some contact info. There it is. There's some contact info. You can go ahead and Hope, if you have any other contact places for folks to go to, please let us know now.
Yeah, I would say my podcast now is kind of my prime hub. hopefortheanimalspodcast.org. I've got my email there and how you can contact me and all of that. So hopefortheanimalspodcast.org is a better place, I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And when it comes to thanking you, I want to thank you personally. I'm in my own journey and learning so much from you, making a difference in my life. But guess what? I have a feeling I'm not the only person that wants to thank you for all of your advocacy and hard work. And so if our tech team can go ahead and unmute everybody, I think they all want to thank you as well. Go ahead, everybody. What do you want to say to Hope?
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hope.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
God bless you.
Thank you. Bye.
Keep up the good work.
That was
Thank
fun.
you.